When the attorney began reading my uncle's will, my mother leaned back as if the room already belonged to her. She chuckled and said I should calm down because, in her words, family always splits everything anyway, especially money like this. My father sat beside her, agreeing silently, wearing the same confident expression he used whenever he believed something was guaranteed. The last time I had seen them that sure of themselves was when I was 16, and they were walking out of our cramped rental, leaving behind an unplugged phone, an empty refrigerator, and a note that boiled down to telling me I would manage on my own. And I did manage, just not in the way they imagined. My name is Emma. When I was left alone and hungry at 16, the only adult who stepped in was my uncle. He took me into his home, challenged me in ways no one ever had before, and helped me build a life where the electricity stayed on because I earned it. Years later, that same life was the reason I found myself sitting in a polished conference room in downtown Chicago, facing the two people who abandoned me, now acting as though they had lovingly raised me. My mother flashed the smile she used whenever she wanted something wide, polished, and fake, and joked with the lawyer that since we were family, there was no reason to complicate things. But everything about this was already complicated. The lawyer paused, adjusted his papers, and turned to a section of the will my parents clearly had no idea existed. Their expressions changed before he even finished the opening line. They had expected a simple payout. What they didn't know was that my uncle had left behind one final condition, hidden deep in the document. That clause didn't just end their fantasy, it detonated it. What he wrote there didn't merely cancel their inheritance. It shattered the lives they were pretending to have built. Before my parents disappeared, life in our small town near Lake Michigan looked ordinary from the outside. There were beat-up grills in driveways, neighbors waving from porches, and warm evenings filled with the sound of kids pedaling past our windows. Inside our home, things were very different. My father, John, was meant to be working as a mechanic, but most weekends he vanished into the casino and came back smelling of alcohol and defeat. My mother, Sarah, had once worked at a grocery store but slowly stopped going. Her days were spent sunk into the couch, scrolling endlessly or watching reality TV, barely registering whether I was home or not. At first, we still had routines. Sunday pancakes. Cheap movie nights with whatever snacks we could afford. Then money fights got louder. Bills stacked up on the counter. The refrigerator went from stocked to sparse to nearly bare. My mother would gesture lazily toward the pantry and tell me ramen was enough. So I took an after-school job at an ice cream shop, serving kids who never had to wonder if there would be dinner later. I handed every paycheck to my mother, hoping it would help. Instead, it vanished into overdue bills, gas, and my father's gambling. One winter morning, I woke up to a silence that felt wrong even by our standards. No television noise. No clattering dishes. No forced arguments about groceries. Their bed was neatly made, something that never happened. Closet doors hung open, most of their clothes missing. In the kitchen, the fridge light revealed spoiled milk and limp vegetables. On the table sat a single folded note with my name written on it. They said they couldn't do this anymore. They said my uncle would handle things. They told me to take care of myself. That was it. No cash. No explanation. No plan. Their phones went straight to voicemail. By the third day, the landlord was pounding on the door, demanding rent I couldn't pay. When I told him my parents had left, he stared at me like I was lying. He reminded me I was 16 and couldn't stay there alone. Either the rent got paid, or he would call someone. In the end, I made the call myself. I went to my school counselor, hands trembling, and told her everything. Within hours, a social services worker arrived with a clipboard and a steady voice. She documented the empty fridge, the note, the unpaid bills. Then she told me they had reached a relative who agreed to take me in. That was the first time my uncle's name felt connected to my life. Henry, my father's older brother, the one my parents always described as distant, obsessed with money and computers, and out of touch with real life. When he arrived, he didn't rush to comfort me. He surveyed the apartment, the peeling walls, the worn furniture, then looked straight at me. He told me to pack only what I actually needed. We were leaving immediately. I filled a duffel bag with clothes, school supplies, and the single photo I had from before everything collapsed. As I stepped out of that apartment and into his sleek black car, I didn't know whether I was being saved or simply moved somewhere else. All I knew was my parents were gone, and a man who barely knew me had decided I was now his responsibility. Chicago felt unreal the first time I saw it. Endless lights. Glass buildings stretching upward. Traffic that never slowed. Everything moved faster than my thoughts, and my old life felt like it was already slipping into something distant and unreachable. When my uncle's lawyer began reading the will, my mother relaxed into her chair as if the room already belonged to her. "Don't worry, Emma," she said with a careless laugh. "We're family. Of course this will all be divided fairly." My father sat beside her, calm and confident, the way people look when they believe money is already theirs. I had seen that expression once before, years ago, right before they disappeared from my life. The last time they looked that certain, I was 16 years old, standing in a small rental house with an empty refrigerator, no phone service, and a note that said everything and nothing at the same time. "You'll manage." I did manage, just not because of them. My name is Emma. When my parents walked away from me, the only person who stepped forward was my uncle. He didn't rescue me with hugs or apologies. He rescued me with discipline, expectations, and a future I had to earn. And years later, that future placed me in a downtown Chicago conference room, sitting across from the same parents who once abandoned me, now smiling as if they had raised me with love and sacrifice. My mother gave the lawyer her most polished smile, the one she used whenever she wanted something. "We're all adults here," she said. "Let's keep things simple." But nothing about this was simple. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, turned a page, and began reading a section of the will my parents clearly didn't know existed. Their confidence shattered halfway through the first sentence. They had come expecting a payday. They had no idea my uncle had planned something very different. Before everything fell apart, our life near Lake Michigan looked ordinary to outsiders. Neighbors waved. Kids rode bikes in the evenings. Barbecue grills sat in driveways like symbols of stability. Inside our house, it was chaos. My father was supposed to work as a mechanic, but weekends often ended at casinos instead of home. My mother slowly stopped going to her job at the grocery store, spending most days on the couch, scrolling endlessly, barely noticing whether I was there or not. At first, we tried to pretend we were still a family. Sunday breakfasts. Movie nights. Then the bills piled up. The arguments grew sharper. The fridge grew emptier. "There's ramen," my mother would say dismissively. "You'll survive." So I got a job after school, serving ice cream to kids who never worried about dinner. I handed my paycheck to my parents, believing it would help. It vanished just like everything else. One winter morning, the house felt too quiet. Their bed was made. Their clothes were gone. The refrigerator held spoiled milk and wilted vegetables. On the table sat a single folded note with my name on it. "We can't do this anymore. Your uncle will take care of you. We're sorry." They didn't leave money. They didn't leave a plan. They just left. By the third day, the landlord was pounding on the door. When I finally went to the school counselor, social services stepped in. Hours later, they told me a relative had agreed to take me. That was the first time my uncle's name mattered. Henry arrived without emotion. He surveyed the apartment, looked at me, and said only one thing: "Pack what you actually need. We're leaving now." Chicago felt unreal. The lights, the traffic, the towering buildings, it all moved faster than my fear could keep up with. When we turned into a quiet neighborhood, I thought he'd made a mistake. The houses were perfect. His house was spotless. Inside, everything smelled clean and expensive. "Shoes off," he said. "We keep order here." He gave me a room. A real room. Then he gave me rules. My days were scheduled. My time was managed. My excuses didn't matter. If I broke a rule, there was no yelling, just consequences. That's not fair, I snapped once. Life isn't fair, he replied calmly. But it is predictable when you control your actions. I fought him at first. Ignored alarms. Missed dinner times. Challenged everything. He never reacted emotionally. He simply adjusted the system until following the rules was easier than resisting them. Slowly, stability replaced chaos. Sometimes he took me to his office. I watched how he listened more than he spoke, how he changed entire meetings with a single question. When I asked how he could tell someone was lying, he answered without hesitation. Truth sounds annoyed. Lies sound nervous. One night, I broke down quietly in my room. He didn't lecture me. He didn't ask questions. He placed tissues on my desk and sat nearby until the pain passed. That was the moment I realized something important. My parents had left me with abandonment. My uncle had given me structure. Henry believed effort mattered more than comfort. A few weeks later, he handed me placement exams and told me I wasn't staying in an average school. Soon, I was attending an elite academy where everyone seemed ahead of me. I struggled. I doubted myself. When my grades came back average, I expected disappointment. Instead, he said, "Good. Now you know where to improve." When I failed a coding project, he didn't reassure me. He sat beside me and made me fix every mistake. Failure isn't judgment, he said. It's information. By senior year, I was thriving. Then came college applications. I chose safe schools. He crossed them out and wrote names I was afraid to say out loud. Comfort keeps people small, he told me. The night before deadlines, he finally explained why he pushed me so hard. My father, his brother, had once been talented, brilliant even, but chose shortcuts and gambling instead of growth. I won't watch that happen again, he said. So I applied. Months later, sitting in a library, my phone buzzed. I opened the email. Accepted. Stanford looked exactly like the future I'd imagined, sunlit walkways lined with palm trees, students talking about ideas instead of overdue bills, a place where no one checked their bank app before ordering coffee. Henry read the acceptance letter without a word. A week later, he placed a slim laptop on the table in front of me. This isn't entertainment, he said. It's equipment. Build something with it. College hit hard, but this time I wasn't unprepared. Every late-night project, every awkward networking event, every moment I felt out of place, I heard Henry's voice in my head reminding me to stay sharp, stay useful, stay focused. I interned at startups across Silicon Valley, learned how founders spoke to investors, how ideas turned into valuations, and how confidence could be engineered. When graduation came, job offers followed from companies on both coasts. I declined them all. Instead, I returned to Chicago, walked straight into Henry's office, and told him I wanted to work with him. He didn't smile. Then at work, you're not family, he said. You earn your position like everyone else. So I did. I coded until my eyes burned. I stayed late. I broke things, fixed them, and learned from every mistake. I led small teams, then larger ones. By my late 20s, I was managing major initiatives, helping guide the firm into cloud security and AI, decisions that caught investor attention and reshaped the company. The irony wasn't lost on me. The child nobody wanted had become a woman people listened to. I believed the past was finally behind me. I was wrong. The night everything changed began like any other. I came home late after a high-stakes client presentation and found Henry seated at the dining table, 2 plates already served. He never waited for anyone. That night, he had. You're behind schedule, he said, but his tone lacked its usual edge. We ate quietly. Then he set his fork down and looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten. Emma, he said, the test results came back. I joked reflexively. Since when do you go to doctors? He didn't respond. Pancreatic cancer, he said. Advanced. They can slow it, not stop it. The words felt unreal, like static from another room. I waited for the punchline that never came. Okay, I said finally. What's the plan? We treat it like work, he replied. Limited time. Clear priorities. Within days, our kitchen counter was covered in organized folders, appointments, research, treatment options. I sat beside him in waiting rooms while he questioned doctors like they were negotiating contracts. Chemo days became calendar entries. I tracked symptoms, adjusted meals, argued with insurance companies, and memorized medication schedules like system backups that couldn't fail. At the office, responsibilities shifted quickly. First, I covered meetings he couldn't attend. Then entire projects. Then approvals. Then strategy. You're already doing the job, he said one afternoon, city lights glowing behind him. This just makes it official. He reminded me of a day years earlier, shortly after I turned 18. Without explanation, he'd taken me to a courthouse and signed papers that made him my legal father. You're not a burden, he'd said then. You're my responsibility. Now, he was doing the same thing again, aligning reality with paperwork. The company will survive with you, he told me. You understand the system, not just the rules. His body weakened, but his mind stayed sharp. Some nights, we reviewed numbers together. Other nights, he asked questions he'd never had time for before. Are you happy? He asked once. Not professionally. Personally. I thought of the empty apartment, the spoiled milk, the note on the table. Yes, I said. Because of you. He smiled faintly. Good. Then it mattered. 10 months after that dinner, Henry passed away at home, exactly as he wanted. No machines. No hospital lights. Just quiet and my hand in his. The funeral was small. Efficient. People spoke about his discipline, his precision, his ability to spot risks no one else saw. When it was my turn, I didn't talk about business. I talked about a man who replaced chaos with structure, abandonment with accountability, and survival with purpose. After everyone left, I stayed by the grave long after the cold settled in. The man my parents called distant had been the only one who never walked away. Weeks later, after grief settled into something steady and heavy, my phone rang at the office. Henry's lawyer asked me to come in for the will reading. I expected simplicity. Henry never treated money emotionally. I assumed paperwork, property transfers, maybe a donation. I had no idea my parents would be there. And I definitely didn't know Henry had left one final lesson behind. I never imagined I'd walk into that glass-walled conference room, take a seat at a long polished table, and find my parents already there, posed like executives waiting to finalize a deal. The past had a habit of showing up uninvited, but this time it arrived dressed for money, staring at everything Henry left behind as if it already had their names on it. For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I'd entered the wrong office. My mother sat upright in a tailored navy dress I knew didn't come from the bargain racks we used to shop at. Her hair was sleek, makeup flawless, the kind of look meant for attention. My father stood beside her in a gray suit that pulled awkwardly at the seams, though he kept adjusting it like he wore one every day. They both turned the second I stepped inside. Emma, my mother said brightly, her voice loud and polished, like we were meeting for brunch instead of a will reading. Look at you. You've done so well. My father chuckled nervously. We're really proud of you, kid. Proud. The word felt acidic. Mr. Thompson, Henry's attorney, gestured for me to take a seat. I sat directly across from them. Between us rested a thick legal folder with Henry's name neatly labeled on the tab. My mother leaned back, scanning the room, then me. This must feel overwhelming, she said softly, dripping with rehearsed compassion. There's the house, the business, all the, what was it called? She glanced at my father. The assets, he said eagerly. Yes, she smiled. The assets. But don't worry. We're family. We'll sort this out together. Everyone will get their fair share of the millions. There it was. No acknowledgement of the past. No apology. Not even a real greeting. Just straight to the money. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. If everyone is ready, I'll begin. He worked through the formalities first: names, dates, confirmations of sound mind. My parents barely pretended to listen. They were waiting for numbers. When he finally reached them, the air changed. Properties. Investment accounts. The lake house. Then the centerpiece: 80% ownership of the cybersecurity firm Henry built from nothing, valued deep into 8 figures. Their expressions shifted instantly. Eyes widened. Breaths shortened. All of the above, Mr. Thompson said calmly, is bequeathed to Emma Harper in full. The silence was sharp. My mother blinked, processing. My father frowned. Excuse me, he said. All of it? That doesn't make sense. We're his family. My mother recovered quickly, leaning forward with folded hands. We're not trying to cause trouble, she said smoothly. But clearly this requires shared oversight. She's young. Managing this kind of wealth needs guidance. That word hit me like a slap. Guidance? I repeated. Is that what you call abandoning me at 16 with spoiled food and a goodbye note? Her smile faltered for half a second before snapping back. We were struggling, she said quickly. We knew Henry would step in. We did what was best for you. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. There are additional instructions Mr. Harper required me to address if circumstances unfolded this way. Both of them stiffened. What circumstances? My father demanded. The lawyer opened a second, slimmer folder. First, he said evenly, when Emma turned 18, Mr. Harper legally adopted her. She is his daughter under the law and his sole heir. The words landed hard. You're her biological parents, he continued, but you are not beneficiaries. You have no legal entitlement to this estate. My father's face flushed. He stole our child, he snapped. You signed the consent, Mr. Thompson replied, sliding documents across the table. Your signatures are on record. My mother scanned the paper and shoved it away. We didn't understand what we were signing. The court disagreed, the lawyer said calmly. Especially considering your conduct afterward. He opened another file, printed emails. Mr. Harper instructed me to disclose these if necessary. Repeated financial demands. Threats. Attempts at coercion. My mother shot to her feet. Those were private. They are admissible, Mr. Thompson replied. Which brings us to the final provision. Both of them froze. If any party attempts to contest this will, he said, folding his hands, the entire estate will be liquidated and transferred to the Harper Children's Oncology Fund. My father laughed sharply. That's insane. It's enforceable, the lawyer replied. And already reviewed. My mother turned to me, eyes sharp. You wouldn't allow that. You wouldn't throw everything away just to spite us. I met her gaze. You stopped being my parents a long time ago. Henry made sure you couldn't take from him the way you took from me. She slammed her hand down. We raised you. You left me with 37 cents, I said. And a landlord ready to evict me. Mr. Thompson closed the folder. You have no claim. Any attempt to create one risks losing everything. My father shoved his chair back. This isn't over. My mother pointed at me. You'll regret choosing him over your own blood. You only remember that word when there's money involved, I said quietly. Mr. Thompson pressed a button. Security appeared moments later. Please escort our guests out. Watching my parents get removed, angry, stunned, powerless, was when I finally understood what Henry had done. He hadn't just left me wealth. He'd built a firewall around my future. They tried once more, through lawyers. Polite threats. Quiet pressure. It didn't work. Mr. Thompson replied with one sentence and the clause attached. They never contacted me again. After that exchange, their attorney disappeared. Mine didn't need to follow up. But my parents? They became relentless. The calls started coming from blocked numbers. Missed calls at first. Then voicemails. Long ones. Crying ones. Stories about doctors, overdue bills, stress they couldn't handle alone. They framed it like an emergency, like I was the only person standing between them and disaster. Eventually, my mother stopped hiding. She texted me directly. Please. Just dinner. No lawyers. No fighting. Just talk as a family. I don't know if it was curiosity or an old reflex to fix things, but I agreed. We met at an Italian restaurant downtown, soft lighting, slow music, the kind of place designed to make people lower their defenses and open their wallets. They were already seated when I arrived. Menus untouched. Waiting. My mother reached for my hand the moment I sat down. Too familiar. Too practiced. You look exhausted, she said gently. This much responsibility isn't healthy. You shouldn't be carrying everything by yourself. My father nodded. We're just in a rough spot, Em. Medical expenses. Back payments. If you could help us out a little, say 200,000, just to stabilize things. I stared at him. In the lawyer's office, you wanted millions, I said. Now it's just 200,000? My mother winced like I'd hurt her. We were emotional, she said quickly. Grief makes people say things they don't mean. You didn't attend the funeral, I reminded her. She didn't respond. Instead, she launched into a rehearsed monologue, my father's health, creditors calling non-stop, the house at risk. When she finally paused, her voice dropped into something carefully fragile. We're not asking for everything. Just a portion. We are your parents. I put my fork down. Parents don't disappear and come back with spreadsheets, I said. You weren't there when I was hungry, or terrified, or one missed payment away from being on the street. You showed up when you smelled money. My father's jaw tightened. So that's it, he snapped. You'll let us collapse while you sit on a fortune? No, I said evenly. I'm letting you experience consequences. The same way I had to. My mother's expression hardened completely. One day, she said quietly, you'll need help. And no one will answer. I thought of Henry. Of how he showed up without obligation. Of how he stayed. Someone already taught me how to survive, I said. He gave me tools. You left me a goodbye note. I stood, left enough cash for my meal, and walked out. I didn't turn around. Their voices followed me for a few seconds, then vanished behind the restaurant door. I thought that would end it. It didn't. A week later, I was working from my home office when my phone buzzed with a security alert. Motion detected. Front gate. I opened the feed and felt my stomach drop. They were standing outside my property. Same outfits. Same entitlement. My mother pressed the keypad with an access code I'd already changed. When it failed, they waited until another car approached and slipped in behind it. I switched between camera angles as they walked toward my house like they belonged there. By the time they rang the doorbell, I was already recording. I opened the door just enough to step into view. You're violating a court order, I said calmly. You're not allowed within 500 feet of this property. My mother laughed. Don't be dramatic. We just want to talk. My father leaned slightly to look past me, his eyes scanning the staircase, the artwork, the life I'd built. Nice place, he muttered. You lost access to my life years ago, I said. This is just the paperwork catching up. My mother's tone snapped. We're not leaving. I lifted my phone. This is being recorded. Every step. Every word. I stepped inside and closed the door. Then I called the police. When officers arrived, my parents were still in the yard, arguing with each other, insisting this was a family matter. I showed the restraining order. The footage. The timestamps. That was enough. Crying didn't help. Arguing didn't help. Handcuffs did. They were escorted down my driveway while neighbors watched from porches and windows. Phones came out. Videos spread. Within days, a local news site picked it up. Not a headline scandal, but loud enough. Parents who abandoned daughter at 16 arrested for violating restraining order while attempting to access inheritance tied to late tech executive. Court documents were linked. Henry's scholarship fund was mentioned. My parents were not portrayed kindly. The fallout was fast. My father lost his job. My mother lost sympathy. Assistants dried up. Friends stopped answering. At the next court hearing, the judge made it clear any further contact would mean jail time. I watched them sit smaller with every word. When it was over, I walked past without speaking. There was nothing left. I went back to work, not to hide, but to build. I grew the company. Hired people Henry would have trusted. Turned down buyout offers. Instead, I invested in something that mattered. A scholarship program. Laptops. Mentors. Tuition support. Real tools for kids who grew up staring into empty refrigerators, waiting for someone who never came. Months later, one of my cameras pinged again. Their car passed slowly by my gate. No stopping. No confrontation. Just a slow roll past a life they could have been part of if they'd chosen differently. They didn't look dangerous anymore. Just small. That's when it finally clicked. Revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's refusing to let the past define what you build next. Henry didn't save me so I could stay trapped in what they broke. He saved me so I could walk forward and maybe reach back for someone else. Blood didn't protect me. Choice did. And if the people who hurt you only come back when they want something, you don't owe them the door. You owe yourself the lock.